So this discussion was created, I would say from scratch, because I built every slide in this PowerPoint myself, but it wasn't from scratch. It was from experience. It's my experience, and it's also answering a lot of the questions that you had in your application. Many of you are looking for, how do I find alignment with my team? What do I do when I have challenging team members? How do I provide clear direction? Why don't people do what I ask them to do? These are all great questions that not just you, but everybody in this room has together. And so every single part of this presentation has been stitched together to be a launch pad in a conversation I hope takes you many, many months down the road, because this should be the beginning and not the end. That's everything I got to tell you about it. So as we get started, I am curious. I'd love to know about you. Specifically, I'd like to know, where are you joining us from? And the best way to do that is to use your annotation tool. So if you go to the top of your screen, you'll see that says you are viewing CalTrin's screen or Jessica Matley's screen, something like that. On the far right, you'll see an upside down arrow. If you click that, a menu appears for you. And the third option down typically says annotate. If you select annotate, you can select on your screen where in California you are. And I just love the visual. So we see people in the south. Great. We have central. We have Bay. I was just in Santa Cruz area, for anyone in that area. Awesome. We're up north in the Humboldt area. Love that. Ferndale, my favorite. Perfect. Wonderful. To those of you in LA County, clearly, as a Southern Californian, our hearts are with you and just thinking about you and your teams and the families that you're supporting out there. Wonderful. Great. So I just love saying this. And for those of you that are not in California, that's okay. You could tell me in the chat, but the majority, 99% of you are. That's okay. You could drop it right into the chat. Wonderful. So as we do breakout rooms, I think something that's kind of fun is that you can not just meet people within your county to see how they're doing it, but you get to see, what does it look like in other counties? How are they doing this work? If everybody in the room relates to some of the questions I pose, like, how do I get people to collaborate? What about alignment? How do we drive results? Those are the questions that brought you here. So you clearly all have some of the same questions together. Okay. Perfect, thank you. I love having this visual. Now, I will also, for those of you that may have joined just a little bit later, I also want to let you know that you have some note-taking slides to kind of help you keep organized throughout the course of this discussion. Casey has dropped that right into the chat for us. So just kind of be mindful that we're going to be moving in this sequential order. We will take a break at the top of the hour because I'm not a monster. And I know that Zoom calls sometimes get way too long. So here's the agenda. This is my promise. We're going to talk about some clear direction. What does it look like to set a clear direction that inspires and motivates a team? Motivation was a question a lot of you had. How about aligning goals across teams? What does it look like to work better together and not feel like it's one silo versus another silo like Hunger Games? We're going to talk about building trust and commitment. How do you test that? How do you know if someone is committed? What do you do when they're not? What do you want to do about that? And lastly, what does it look like to break down barriers between teams to drive not just innovation, but what does it look to drive results at the end of the day? Many of these are going to require strategies, your expertise. I'm going to ask people to come off of mute. Otherwise, I just would have filmed a video and mailed it to you, but I didn't. I brought you here so we could talk together. And ideally, you'll be speaking within your breakout rooms as well, and we'll get there when we get there. So let's jump in by describing and defining, what is collaborative leadership? When I say collaborative leadership, what do I mean? What is the focus of this discussion? What's it going to look like? I actually would prefer your thoughts. Because when it comes to the idea of collaboration, it can mean different things to different people. Sometimes collaborative leadership means your executive team. Maybe you are feeling like you are on a team with other leaders who are making big decisions for this organization and your community, but you haven't quite found a rhythm together yet. Maybe collaborative leadership to you means a team. Maybe you're new to that team. Maybe you used to be a peer on that team and now you're leading a group of people you used to go to lunch with. Maybe you are facing some of the challenges many of your organizations are with turnover, with uh, you know, short staff, lots of work and not enough people to do it. Collaboration can look like a lot of different things. Thank you so much. I see some of you in the chat saying engaging your team in the leadership decisions you have to make. Taking and asking for ideas or suggestions for your team. Yeah. Figuring it out together, struggling through it together, Angelita says. Working together and listening to others. Yeah. Moving together, brainstorming, leading as a servant leader, Joanne says. William says everyone moving in the same direction. So this is what I would like you to do. I want you to have some sort of frame of reference for this discussion. Brainstorming as a team, Crystal says. Nice to see you, Crystal. Daisy says working on a team to meet a goal. Focusing on working together. I love it, Jose. Decision making rather than relying on strict hierarchies. Absolutely. So what does it look like to all be in agreement of where we're going and how we're going to get there? So I want you to have some context. As we learn strategies, what are you going to do with them? Like you're going to write in your journal, like, dear diary, I learned something cool today. Or can you take it and maybe put together an action plan based on the strategies you're going to learn? So this is what I'm going to ask you to do in a breakout room. Your goal here is to be specific, at least with yourself. Who are you trying to organize or bring together? Is it a leadership group? Is it an entire organization? Is it a department? What would successful or efficient collaboration look like? In other words, how would you know when it's working? So do me a favor, let's just play along together. I want you to think about on a scale from 1 to 10. 10 is the most collaborative your team could be. Think about what collaboration means to you. 10 out of 10 is it's going the way you hoped it would. Everything is in flow, the result, people are innovative and collaborative. 1 is chaos. On a scale from 1 to 10, where would you say your team is today? Why don't you tell me in the chat? Scale from 1 to 10. 10 is the most collaborative they could be. 1 is SOS, send help. All right. I see a lot of 7s and 6 and 5s. A 6.5. Yeah, 4s, great. 8s. 6, maybe 7 when I have caffeine. I hear that. Yeah. So this is what I'd like you to do. And maybe you could do this in that breakout. Why don't you define what 10 looks like? My goal today isn't that you leave a 10, if I'm being honest, because it takes more than just your efforts. You're driving a cruise liner, not a speedboat. If you feel like you're a 5, what strategies would you leave with today that would get you to a 6 in the next 30 days? If you're a 7, what would get you to an 8? If you're an 8, what would get you to a 9? What would bump us up just by 1 in the next 30 days using the techniques that you are going to take away from today? So in your breakout room, you're going to define 2 things. Who are you trying to organize here? Who is in this collaborative discussion that you want to create? And the second is, what would 10 look like? How would you know when 10 is happening? What is a 10 out of 10 for you? These groups are going to be kept relatively small, and this is my only ask of you. I have some very big asks, okay? Ask number 1 is that you be a strong collaborative partner to the person that you're in a breakout room with. What does that mean? It means not ghosting them like this. You and I have all been in breakout rooms where you showed up ready to have a conversation and someone did not show up ready to have a conversation. I'm not saying you have to have all the right answers. I promise I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you have to be willing to start the conversation, and you cannot lead people to a place you are not willing to go yourself. End of discussion. So if you're looking to develop collaboration, you have to participate in collaboration. This is a great way to get that started. I will keep these relatively short. We're going to keep them, we'll say 8 minutes or less. I'm shooting for groups of 2. I really am. Now, if you get into your breakout room and technology has failed your partner and they are unable to join you, please come back to the main session. I will reassess you somewhere else. If you're like, Jessica, in my heart, I really wanted to do breakout rooms today, but I cannot. I will not blame you. I don't even shame you. What I'll say is, I promise we'll send you the recording and I will give you this opportunity to exit. That's it. So if I can have your commitment to participate and to lead the way in collaboration, which you have come here to learn more about, I'm going to ask you to say yes in the chat. If you're here and you're ready, let's say yes. We're going to kick it off. Thank you, Courtney, leading the way. Mark, wonderful. I see some real quick yeses. You all are so fast with your fingers. Great, wonderful. All right, then I believe you. I'm going to set my timer for 8 minutes. This will give you a chance to say, hey, good morning. Hi, how are you? My name is blank. That's how we make friends. Who am I here to coordinate? Who am I here to collaborate with? And what would successful or efficient collaboration look like? What does 10 out of 10 look like for me? I'm going to share this slide into your breakout room so you don't have to memorize or say, what are we talking about? Here it is. If you need anything, you raise that hand or you come back to the main session. I'm going to start the breakout rooms now. Let me just see. Let's see here. I might have perfect pairs. No way. It's in the stars. I do, y'all. I just solved all the world secrets and no one heard me. Sorry about that. Welcome back, everybody. So grateful to have you. And hopefully you had a chance to meet somebody in another area, but may have faced some common challenges to what you have faced. So what I'm so curious to know is I'd love to hear from somebody specifically, somebody that feels like you have a clear vision for what a successful or efficient collaboration is going to look like. Can anybody see it in their mind? If you can, I'd love to hear. If you would bring yourself off of mute, maybe raise your hand. I'd love to hear, what is 10 out of 10 for you? Give us some ideas. Does anybody have a 10 out of 10 example? You could raise that hand. Actually, it's in your chat or at the bottom. And let's use that as our kind of our compass. Oh, I train therapists. I forgot to say that. I can wait a long time.
I can take a shot at it.
Hey, no, I mean,
Okay.
that's all I ask.
Um, I was partnered with Alejandra,
Great.
and we were just kind of talking, and what I think about in my mind as I was having the conversation with her is a successful and collaborative team looks kind of like a well-oiled machine where
Mm.
everyone kind of knows their duties and responsibilities but because everyone's doing their part and what they need to do, they kind of go hand in hand with the other pieces of the machine, and it's kind of everyone's doing their job and everyone's just going along. Maybe there's like oil needed here and there, but it doesn't disrupt the flow of things, and that's kind of how I think about it.
Noemi, I appreciate that. Can we give some appreciation, please? You have reactions at the bottom of your screen. It looks like a little heart or a smiley face. And Noemi, this is my way to appreciate you for going first. Hopefully you'll see those start to populate. The idea here, and something that you're mentioning that I feel like a lot of people can relate to, is what does it feel like in the vision of having a process, a team, an organization where every single role, every task is mission critical. People not only know what they're supposed to do, but they do it. And like you said, like all machines, sometimes they need maintenance, but it should still kind of run on its own. And for some of you, I wonder if anybody else, if you used the term well-oiled machine, when you described your 10 out of 10, say yes in the chat. I always love to know. Sometimes we use the same words in leadership. Well-oiled machine is absolutely one that I hear very often. Yeah, Gabrielle is like, me too. I hear it. So this idea of well-oiled machine, it really has to start with, what does the machine look like? What is the problem that this machine solves? And often when it comes to leadership, are you able to give your team a target that they know they're trying to hit? How clear are you? How clear are you as the visionary of your team in communicating the vision that you have? Otherwise, it looks a little something like this. Has anybody ever felt like this? When your leadership has told you, hey, we have some things that we want you to try out, some things that we want you to do, and you feel like you're trying to hit a target, but you're not too sure what you're aiming at? What does it feel like for you when you are trying to work on a project, complete a task, appease a funder, and you're not too sure what the rules of the game are? How do you feel about it? Tell me in the chat. How do you feel when people tell you to go solve the world's problems, but no playbook on how to do that? Yeah, chaotic, lost and frustrated, lost, defeated, Ashley says. Yeah, frustrated, overwhelmed, confused, Crystal says. Absolutely. Low confidence. Oh, low confidence. Well, well, well. Now we're getting closer to the truth. Horrible, stressed, gaslighted. William, it sounds like you have an idea. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I would think that it would start off with the whole team creating a mission statement, so we're all kind of going the same way, and it kind of allows people to get to understand the other individuals as they're going, and then also we can have the well-oiled machine, and everybody has their place.
Mhm.
And they understand that, but there needs to be some flexibility where an individual will take over if somebody is sick, not there, gone, something happened. Because that's really important. That's what I've learned over the years working for the company I'm working for. You got to be able to just step up and uh, take over if you need be.
I appreciate that. So the idea, and like you said, William, it's not just having a clear direction where we're going, but also when things come off course. You know, and I know, William, things will not self-correct themselves. A culture that is starting to slowly spiral into negative town is not going to just one day people come back, everyone's over it, and we move forward. That sometimes it's a leader that steps into it and says, wait a minute, wait a minute. We're off track, y'all. We need to course correct. But in
Yes.
order, like you've mentioned, we need to know where we're trying to go, not just you as a leader, which starts with you, but does your team know where we're trying to go? You know, an image that comes to mind with me, it's an image I use quite a bit, especially in one of the programs that I lead here at CalTrin called Leading Through Change. A lot of it is what you're speaking to as well, William, is this image right here. It's of a rowboat. Now, has anybody ever rowed before? Just tell me in the chat. Are you a rower? Do you want to know how many times I've rowed a boat? 0 times, 0.0 times. But I have a sister-in-law. And my sister-in-law, Cheryl's you're gonna understand my analogy, Cheryl. My sister-in-law is this person here, not in this photo, but this is where she sits. If you can see my little mouse, I'll try to annotate and circle her here. This is where she typically, oh, is it a spotlight? How do I even do that? Oh, here it is. You can see my little laser. That little, this person here in the front is actually leading the boat of the rowers. And the place that they are trying to go, everybody on this team is rowing right here. They're rowing to the horizon. But which way are they facing? Are they facing the horizon? No. They are looking at the leader, her. Every one of these rowers are confident in their leader. They know that this leader knows where they're going, that when she says speed up, when she says slow down, when she says go left, go right, they have trust that her vision is clear, that she can see the horizon and is getting them there. Do you know in leadership, doesn't it feel like that sometimes? Like you're trying to impart a vision and people can't see where you're trying to go because they're not in the meetings that you're in and they don't have the experience that you have. And they don't know that it's going to get a little messy before it gets a little bit better. So as a leader, there's two things that you need to remember. Number one, your role is not just as a guide and advisor, it's as a trusted guide and advisor. Do people trust that you know where you're going? And it's not because you don't. Of course you do. I believe in you. But are you able to communicate that in a way that imparts trust on others? Because people won't willingly give it. The second thing I'd like to remind you, and this is where my HR brain comes into play, every single person on this boat is mission critical. They all have to show up to practice. They all have to row. Nobody in here is missing an oar. But does it ever feel like sometimes people are in your boat and they are refusing to row? Worse, you're telling them to row left and they row right. And you're like, what are we doing? As a leader, it's not just making sure everyone is aware that they are mission critical. I believe that you can train people how to do their job. You can show them what to do. You can show them how to do it. You cannot make them want to, but you can hold them accountable if they don't. So as a leader, sometimes it is not just getting in and making sure you're here. By the way, this leader isn't telling them what to do from the shore. And when things get rough, the people that these employees, the ones that they will not trust, are the leaders that will not get in the boat with them. The ones that say like, good luck, and then just let them struggle in the water. They want someone to get in the boat. And so I like to start it off by saying and kind of talking about direction. How do we provide direction in a way that builds trust and confidence in the people that we are serving on the team? Because remember, Simon Sinek said that leadership is not being in charge of people. Leadership is taking care of those in your charge. And this staff and this organization is in your charge if you have a leadership role. So I'd like to offer you something. And this will be a series of questions, things to consider. Because in my experience, clarity is confidence. The more clear you are in a leadership perspective, telling your team, imparting to your team where they're going, the more clear they are, the less they feel, well, the less they kind of feel like this. So what I have put together here are just food for thought. Some things, take notes that make sense to you. Let's look at each one of these and ask ourselves, of these 5 things, these 5 areas, how are we communicating this in a clear way? How does that build confidence? And very specifically, what happens when it's missing? When I'm working, I do a lot of like executive coaching and consulting and things like that. And when someone is going to roll out a new plan, a new policy, they're looking to make a big change, I make them answer these 5 questions. And if they can't clearly communicate it to me in a conversation about it, no way they're ready to communicate it to the team. So let's start with the what. Describing to your team what is going to happen sometimes involves more than just, here are the deadlines and here's when it's due. Now let me ask you, when what is missing on a team, if we are not clear on what is, well, sorry, let me back up for a second. Let me just describe what these are. Then I want to pull them out one by one. The what of the conversation is being clear. What is the deadline? Or I'm sorry, what is the goal line? Where are we trying to get to? What does it look like there? Not just what does it look like there, but what will success look like for us? As a leader, are you clearly defining for them, this is what the summit looks like when we get there? With confidence, clearly describing what it is. Next, it's giving them some road mapping of how we're going to do it. See, the challenge that, what is the goal line? What does success look like? I love that. That is the what. Now, the challenge that I see the most is that people sometimes let the how get in the way of their what. People let the how get in the way of their what. They get so focused on the small details of like, we don't have the staff, we don't have this, what about this, what about that? If you start with the big vision first, if you make sure that we're clear on the mission and how does this mission lend to the success of the population that I'm serving, of this team, of this organization, then the how is just an execution of that strategy. How do you expect them to get there? What is that roadmap? And have you considered what challenges they might bring up to you when you're telling them the how? Are you well prepared to have conversations to overcome some of those challenges? What does that look like for you? What is that how? The next thing we have to answer, of course, is the who. Who exactly on the team is doing this? What does it look like? That's where alignment comes in. We want to avoid duplication and gaps. Of course, we want to talk about when, that would be deadlines. And lastly, and I would argue most importantly, why? Now, I will tell you that each one of these, we're going to go one by one. Each one of these, if it is missing, will pose a very unique problem to your team. If the what is missing, people are shooting into the dark. They don't know what they're doing. They're not clear on what the vision is. They're not clear on what it's supposed to look like. They're just doing it because you told them to. That's going to burn them out. If the how is missing, you have people that are fired up to do it. They're well equipped. They're excited, but everybody is walking now in a different direction because they're not too clear who's supposed to do what. You're going to find gaps. You're going to find challenges. If you forget to mention who, then I thought it was her job and she thought it was my job. Oh, you're doing that too? Then why the hell am I doing it? Duplication and gaps happen if you leave out that who. What about if I leave out the when? What does that look like to you, y'all, in the chat? What if you leave out the when? What are the unique challenges you see when the when gets left out? Stress. It takes forever, Gabrielle says. Forever. People don't do anything. The last minute chaos because they quickly approached the deadline, weren't paying attention. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. The deadlines aren't achieved. No updates along the way. They don't know what to expect. Unknown deadlines. Now, this is my favorite question. They progressively get harder. What happens if you leave out the why? Why don't you tell me in the chat? What if you leave out the why? What happens? Any challenges? No investment, Veronica says. Lack of crucial motivation, Mark says. No buy-in, no passion, lack of investment. What's the purpose? Retention, confusion, resentment, lack of understanding, Denise says. Absolutely. But when we have a directive to give, how well are we looking at each one of these boxes and how equipped are we to talk about them? And I can promise you this, the longer it takes you to describe what each one of these are, the less prepared you are to tell your team about it. The longer it takes you to explain it, the less equipped you are to talk about it. Because you may not have fully figured it out yet. And when you communicate that message, they are going to feel it. So we're going to talk about the first couple, we'll break, and then we'll come back for the back half. Okay, this is in your notes, but I want to dive into it a little bit more.
Jessica, really quick, can you repeat that last thing again when you're saying the longer you communicate
The
about
longer you take to explain the message, let's say, Anne-Marie, let's say that you have a goal in mind. And I ask you, tell me the what, how, who, when, why. The longer it takes you to try to describe it to me, the less equipped you are to talk to your team about it. Because if I'm like, what are you doing? You're like, well, I mean, it's like a project, but really, Jessica, what we're doing is what is a word? Give me a buzzword. Capacity building. And I'm like, not again. What does that mean? Like we use really nice words sometimes, but we don't have a concrete what, how, who, when, why. Thank you, Anne-Marie, for asking.
Thanks.
So then let's talk about, and these are strategies that are going to help you narrow it down so that you can deliver the message. It starts with the what, defining the goal. What exactly are we trying to achieve? What exactly are we looking to achieve? How clearly can we articulate the goal or outcome? Some strategies that you might use. Define what success looks like. At the end of this project, this is what our outcomes will be. When we achieve this goal, these are the benefits we will see. We are working on our referral process right now because we are trying to achieve higher completion rates. When we complete this goal, the families that we recommend to services are more likely to connect to the services, which means those children are receiving the services that we have identified for them. The what? And if we can, we give them the metrics. We are looking to increase our completion rates by 10%. As specific as we can. Give us something to shoot for. The more specific the target. You might, of course, use that SMART format. We call it SMARTY now, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely, inclusive. I feel like there's an E there. Equitable? SMARTY. I think many people are familiar with the SMART format. Focusing on the impact of the vision and what that impact has on the team and organization. Certainly, we're not doing this because we're bored and we have nothing else to do. There's a reason. And if you can't explain why they're doing it or what it is, good luck getting them to do it. Keep the goal concise, a sentence or a phrase. The longer it takes you to explain, the less prepared you are to discuss it. The what. So this is a tip. This is kind of like a pro tip I'm giving you. Imagine explaining the goal to somebody outside of the team, somebody that doesn't do your job. Would they understand it? Or are you getting lost in the words like capacity building and this and that? Are you drowning them in vocabulary instead of just giving them the what? Here it is. We are looking to accomplish this goal. The next, of course, is the how. Outlining what is the approach, what is the road map we got to take to get there. In other words, how will we achieve it? Now, in the spirit of collaboration, this how is very unique because I absolutely would recommend that you include the voices of the workers that are going to do it. Sometimes they have more on, like, what do we call it? Frontline experience. They're able to tell you, oh, you know what? I've tried that. This is how I might modify it. Sometimes the longer you've been in your organization, the further you get from direct service. You know how that works. It's like I say, oh, the how is where there are missed opportunities. Absolutely, Naomi. Noemi, sorry. I would say that too. I use football a lot as an analogy. Sorry, sorry about that. Football and baseball, but in football, the decision makers can't even smell the grass anymore. They're in the booth. And it's the players that have to execute. So my question is for you, how are you maybe folding in some of the thoughts into the how? Now, sometimes we don't have a choice. It is what it is. It's the funding requirements. But sometimes the execution, there is a little bit of wiggle room. And that's where we can bring our team in to say, how can we make this work? We're going to make it work. What works best for us? So some strategies that you might use. Outline key steps or milestones towards the final goal. I've seen some teams make a physical chart that they move along the way to show that they are making progress, because sometimes it doesn't feel that way. How do we do that? I'll tell you, Atomic Habits, if anybody's ever read Atomic Habits. Atomic Habits uses a strategy that I would also recommend. Sometimes it's those visual reminders. So let's say you want to increase a completion rate. They have a technique that they use in sales where they move a marble from one jar to another for every sale that's earned to show the progress that you can't always remember. Is there any way to kind of visually see the progress that your team is making? Leveraging your team's strengths and resources. You are comprised of subject matter experts. Just everybody has a different level and approach to their expertise. How are you leveraging that? Do you know what the strengths of your team are? As a Gallup certified strengths coach, let me get nerdy for a second. It doesn't matter whether you do the Gallup assessment or you do What's Your Hogwarts House or Myers-Briggs or Emergenetics, Enneagram. What are you learning about the people around you and how to leverage that together? Breaking the goal into manageable tasks to ensure focus, accountability, and momentum. When you say there are 10 steps, let's say our goal is to increase completion rates for referrals. It's probably going to take 10 things to get there. And if we're not breaking it into one step at a time, at least milestones, it may feel daunting. It might feel, for some people, change is difficult. Let's not forget, change is hard. So for a lot of the things that you're trying to execute, it's going to be a change. And if you're not showing them the roadmap of how we're going to make it through this change together, they're going to talk themselves right out of it. Often, rowers, by the way, they talk through the course. They kind of sit together as a team and visualize the path before they get in the boat, just so that they can even mentally see it, because they won't be able to see any of it. They'll be facing the wrong way. Another strategy, or I'm sorry, a tip that I'd like to offer is consider what resources, what tools, what processes might be needed to ensure success. So a technique I've used with clients in the past is I have them do 3 challenge, 3 solutions. As a team, let's think of what are the 3 challenges that might present themselves for the first couple of steps. For the first milestone, what exactly is going to stand in our way? Time? Great. What else? Resources? Great. What else? Now, what are some solutions that we can brainstorm together to be proactive in the challenges that we are going to face, because we're going to face it. And guess what? There might be a 4th challenge we didn't even know about until it presents itself. And when it does, we're going to rally, we're going to identify a solution. For some leaders, I can only tell you this from a strengths perspective, you might be so committed to the plan that you are not willing to break from it, even if it's going to get you there faster or more effectively. So be mindful of that, would you? Sometimes bringing people into the how will challenge you and your consistency strength. I know you. I promise if it's going to get you there better, faster, it's worth it. I believe we'll touch on this next one before we break here, and that is the who. How are we able to identify the clear roles that people need to do in this process? Like we heard earlier, not just a well-oiled machine, but who's doing what? It's who is involved in the success of this goal. I think sometimes people forget that they're mission critical. They forget that. And I use that rowing example all the time. People forget that if I row my oar, it gets us closer to the goal. That maybe I'll just let other people do the rowing, and I'm just going to use it as like a ride around the lake. So how are we relaying to folks that we cannot do this without them? Your funding is tight. If you could do it without them, you know you would, but you can't. So clarifying who needs to be part of the process, what is their role? Some strategies might be identifying the tasks needed to be completed and the key stakeholders in that process. So it might be team members, it might be members of leadership, it might be other departments. Who's got to be in the conversation? One of the biggest mistakes I've seen, it's funny because it's like a pendulum because you got to find the sweet spot. I've been in meetings with people and half the people in that meeting either don't need to be there and they're throwing out wild ideas. I'm like, who? I'm so sorry. Who is this? Like, what are we doing? They do not have the context around the conversation. So we actually aren't getting to where we need to go. Or sometimes I don't know if it's better or worse. I'll say, what about, we have an action plan. They're like, yeah, we can't wait to do this, but we need to check in with this person and that person and this person. And I say, okay, so we need 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more meetings. How about everybody that needs to be here, get here, and then we can solve this today. They're not here, call them. We're not doing this again. So for those that are like, gosh, I wonder why sometimes my ideas don't get traction, I'd ask you, how many people are you involving that maybe are slowing you down? And how many people are missing in the conversation that need to be there? Who is very important. Now, I understand everybody wants to participate. I'm fine with that. Then do a pre-survey. I sent you all, well, you didn't know you did it. You did a pre-assessment for me when you registered. I asked you a question. I said, what is the area of challenge that you have? Imagine if I invited you all here and said, okay, what do you guys want to talk about? we'd have 1,000 voices. We can't do that. We have to narrow it down first, identify what's going to meet the most needs, and then go at it. Of course, clarify those task roles to avoid gaps and overlap. That's also, by the way, where I'm going to build trust and accountability with a team member. I'm going to say, here is the role. This could be on their first day, like an onboarding checklist. This could be a mission charter, like William talked about. Every project can have its own charter and be very clear of who's doing what and by when. Consider how to involve and inspire each group. The best way I can describe it is every role in an organization solves a problem. Ideally, they're not creating them, right? I used to be in HR. They said we were the problem makers. No, we're not. We're problem solvers. But the question is, what problem is each team trying to solve that this project might align with? And how are you speaking that language? Think of it as playing apples to apples, like the game. You play the player. How am I speaking to your needs, which should be our needs, but I might have to modify to make sure that we can get to where we need to go? The art of collaborative leadership, it's like show running. It's making sure that your movie is made because you're talking to the people in a way that inspires them. Now, I want to highlight very quickly, Angelita, your idea before we move on. I see it says we could go in with a plan, but ask them for their feedback to finalize the how. Absolutely. Come in with a strategy and say, hey, y'all, here's the roadmap. Are there any potholes we need to watch out for? What milestones on this pre-designed work roadmap are we going to celebrate along the way? We're not just going to celebrate when we're done. We're going to celebrate as we go. Keep us motivated. All right. As we're discussing these so far, I hope you're starting to ask yourself, am I talking about the what? The how and the who? We'll come back and touch on that, but I want to give you a 5-minute break just to refill your coffee. And then when we come back, we'll finish up this section and then we'll pop into the alignment and then we'll do a breakout. So I'll see you and start diving right back. So we just talked about clarifying roles. We talked about being clear on the what, on how, who, and now we're going to look at the last two, which is when. So what are those milestones? We have an idea of what they are, but when are we supposed to reach that goal? And when are we supposed to get to the check marks leading up to it? And when I say establish a realistic timeline with checkpoints, I'd like to offer an example. This has happened on more than one occasion, I've been working with an organization and they have an expectation of their employees to complete things in a certain amount of time. Let's say 48 hours. They're having challenges with people completing deadlines. Great. I ask, think about your best employee. I know we can't say that. Think about your most effective employee, the one that is consistent. How long does it take them to do it? And they say about 72 hours. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So even your highest performer, your most effective person can't get it done in the 48-hour window. Is it possible that that timeline is not realistic? So I mean realistic, not what it should be, but is it possible to do that? Some strategies, creating and communicating a project timeline, being very clear of this is what it looks like when it's working well, and these are the steps that are impacted when it doesn't. Setting short-term wins, and of course, celebrating them and building momentum. Many of you in the house are probably achievers. And if you know your strengths, that means you're purple. It means that you want to get to the goal yesterday. And I love that about you. It means that, you're going to do bigger things, great things in your organization. But what does it feel like? You could tell me in the chat, because some of you might have met one. What does it feel like to work for a leader who is only looking at the finish line and does not celebrate wins along the way? How do you feel on that team? Or how do you think people might feel on a team like that? What do you think? Discouraged, Sandy says. Yeah. Drained. Overlooked, Holly says. They're gonna be in overdrive. And if we're not celebrating, acknowledging, recognizing along the way, engaging, if you will, people are going to feel like, yeah, burned out. They're going to feel burned out. Celebrating milestones doesn't mean sugarcoating how difficult the work is, because it's difficult. We're not lying to them, but we're giving them something to look forward to, and we're celebrating like, we did it. Okay, now we're getting some momentum. Look at what we've done so far. This is how much further we have to go. Including regular check-ins to reassess or adjust as needed. For you that are high in consistency and love structure, the idea of reassess and adjustment makes you want to just blah. But if you're on a course that needs a little bit of adjustment to get you closer to your goal faster, it's going to require that you push yourself a little bit outside of that. These regular check-ins, how many times has anybody in the room ever given a project, an assignment to an employee, and you walked away from it like, my job's done, and you went about your life, and then you came back and you're like, how's the project going? And they went, project? And you said, yes, the project that we talked about. And they're like, one more time. And you start asking yourself, did I fever dream that? I'm pretty sure we talked about it. I want to tell you something that I learned. I actually learned it from Tony Robbins. You cannot manage what you will not measure. You cannot manage what you will not measure. That means if you are not checking on the progress of these milestones, you will struggle in being able to hold people accountable, to celebrate those wins. And how do you manage that without, how do you manage that with micromanaging or without micromanaging? How do you manage that?
Without.
Without. Yeah, I was like, easy, you keep asking, just kidding. Well, let me ask you, if you don't mind, Gabriella, what does micromanagement look like or feel like to you?
Well, it depends to people. I've had people that are like, yes, let's build a timeline, let's do the steps, and let's be checking in with each other. And it works really good. But there's others that are like, oh, you don't trust me, like just give me the thing. I know what to do. Like, what do you want? How do you want it? And let me run with it. And, but if you even kind of say like, oh, how are things going? Do you need any support? They kind of get offended. Like, you don't trust me. Like, don't micromanage me. So
I'm curious. Do you, for the people that sometimes are opposed to a micromanagement style, are they typically your most effective employees or your least effective employees?
oh, I've had both.
Hmm.
I've had a couple that are super effective that I had no problem just giving it to them because I know it's gonna get done. But then I've had a couple that no.
Some people don't like to be held accountable.
Okay.
Although I will say often just to, and by the way, how many people in the room totally understand that feeling of like, gosh, I really want to check in, but I don't want to upset them. As a leader, you have to be able to know the pulse of what's happening. That doesn't always make people comfortable, so it may be in the delivery, right? Do you have the option to set your intent? If you are a high performer, but my role as your leader is to make sure this project is moving along. And I say, hey, Gabriella, just checking in, like, how's it going? And you say, fine. Do you think it's not going fine? Like, why are you asking other people? Like, do you not think I'm going to do it? That just told me so much more about where you are as like in what's happening inside of Gabriella than in kind of what is the bigger picture of the question, which is, how is it going? So I might say, hey, Gabriella, by the way, this is like for anybody that isn't familiar with like crucial conversations, CalTrin, we teach something called effective feedback. And this is where I might lend to it. But I might say, Gabriella, I just want to like make sure we're on the same page about why I'm asking. I ask not because I trust you. You're actually incredibly efficient and super reliable, and I appreciate you for that. It's actually a standard question I have to check with everybody. But I trust that if you had a challenge, you would come tell me. Like, what does it mean? What do you think I mean when I say, how's it going? Well, I think you don't trust me. I'm so glad you told me that. I want to make it clear. This is not a question about trust. I do trust you. This is a question about progress. I don't associate the two. I think sometimes we have to reestablish, which is, oh my gosh, it's the next one. It's the why, right? But great question. I know a lot of people have that one. Thank you so much. I see check-ins may look different with different people. Absolutely. I have learned to set check-ins as part of the general work and add it to the agenda. It's an expectation that we will talk about the work. We heard William talk about a team charter, a mission statement in the beginning. And I said every project can have its own mission charter. Sometimes it's also communicating all of this. Hey, everybody, we have this roadmap that we're going to walk on together. And just so you know, this is when check-ins will happen. This is what they are going to look like. So you're kind of giving them the level set in advance. So it's not caught off guard. Okay. So this brings me to my last point. I was like, I knew I needed to talk about this. Utilizing collaborative tools to track deadlines and be ready to hold people accountable through effective feedback conversations. So, do you use a project management system to check to see where people are in their project without having to ask? Because Gabriella, that might save you a question. If you use a project management system to track work and assign work, will you tell me what the project management system is in the chat, please? Because some of your friends here need to know that it exists. Does anybody use a project management system? What is it? Tell me what it is. What project management systems do folks use? Asana, Trello, Monday.com, Microsoft Project, Excel sheets. Been super impressed when somebody can make an Excel sheet into it, which the templates already exist online. It's one Google away. Smart Sheets, Planner. I haven't heard of Rike. I like that. Some people have project management systems that you purchase, like a Salesforce.com is a mega project management system. But most of if you use Office products, do you know Microsoft comes with a Microsoft project built in? Use that. I see Waterfall, Microsoft Project, Google Sheets will do it. But do you have any shared space where I can track progress? Or maybe the team can track progress? That is a way to ensure that you are able to kind of track from a distance, pop in when needed. But if things are not moving forward, that's where you have to step in to that boat again and give the accountability conversation that you and I hate to have. But we have to have it. Otherwise, those to the left and the right will identify what the standard is. And then they're just going to meet there. We don't want that. For some of you, you're writing some of these down. I would advise it. Make sure that you are kind of making yourself a note. Google Trello. What is Trello? A lot of these are also free systems. Sometimes they do take a budget. By the way, for anyone that works in a multidisciplinary team, these type of collaborative tools can help keep folks accountable and in alignment, even when you're not in the same building on the same team. And for those that are in remote spaces, of course, it's even more difficult with sometimes remote teams. This is another incredible way to do that. Lorena says we create assignments in OneDrive and we can see where everyone is at. Yeah. Here's the good news. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The internet did it for us. One YouTube video or two away, and you yourself will be a master of Excel or whatever it is. Great. I love all your ideas. So lastly, but not leastly, are we giving a why? Why? Can we connect this work to a purpose, I hope? The question we're really answering is, why does this matter? If it feels like busy work, it's because someone has not done a great job yet of explaining why it has to be done in the first place. And sometimes the reason is our funder requires it. That's what it looks like. The purpose is to motivate that team, of course, not just connecting to the larger vision, but we're also getting some buy-in so that they see, again, these big vision conversations that are happening behind closed doors, they're not a part of. So you're kind of helping bring them into that through transparency. Some of the strategies might be highlighting how the goal aligns with their organizational or professional values, sharing the positive impact. So what will this goal, when we accomplish it, what gets better as a result? Also explaining the steps involved in the creation and identification of the goal. How did we get here? For those of you that are very strategic thinkers, you probably walk into a room, you can identify the problems just like that. You identify the path forward just like that. And then you're annoyed that nobody else is seeing it like you're seeing it. They don't have the gift of strategy sometimes like you do. Your job is to provide really the roadmap for them. Here is how we came to this. This is why we're focusing on this right now. This is why we're doing it in Q1 and not Q3. You're seeing a larger picture and you don't have to paint it all, but at least let them get some more clarification. The tip is humans love to connect to stories and emotions. Think about what inspires your team. So for example, I worked in hospitality for many years, and our team at the time, it was a property with 917 people that I loved and were under my care for learning and development. And our team was really struggling at the time with a very specific service goal. And it was kind of like creating a warm welcome for folks. How do we make people feel welcome the minute they walk in? And for some of you, it might be thinking about how do we help people feel welcomed as they walk into our services or our office or whatever that looks like. So we did kind of like a contest. We wanted to pick a guest of the quarter. Let's love on a guest and give them the surprise and like the experience of a lifetime. So everybody has to be on the lookout to meet a guest with an extraordinary story, and then let's rally together to give them the trip of their life. And boy, we were not ready for how impactful that was. We met a family. I'll spare you the details. It is very sad. We met a family. It was a mom with her 3 daughters, and the youngest daughter was actually receiving treatment at Children's Hospital, Rady Children's, which CalTrin is based out of. And this was going to be their last family vacation. And the mom, in speaking to the mom, they kind of learned that. And we gave that family a trip they were not expecting. They had to stay at a hotel close to a hospital, which is why they chose us, and all these great, reasons. Of course, there was a very challenging reason why they were there. But we asked, would it be okay if we celebrate you and your daughter and your other daughters and kind of, leave it to us? And she said, yes, absolutely. The amount of departments and people that came together, employees, came in on their days off to sign the cards and the balloons and all the things that we gave this family. There was a why that they were able to connect to so strongly that, do you know, by serving that one family, the service scores boomed. It was an explosion of guest service because people came in with a different perspective that maybe the person that I helped today is going through some stuff I don't know. And so it was this storytelling that I couldn't go in there and say, hey, everybody, as your training development person, we should, give a warm welcome. And they're like, yeah. But it's one thing to connect it to a purpose and show them like your work really does impact people, real people. So when you think about some of the goals that you're trying to hit, and you think about some of the policies, and yeah, okay, listen, sometimes the policies are boring and they just have to be made more efficient. I get that. But really, if we think about the purpose of your work, it does serve a much bigger mission. And certainly we wouldn't be looking at this project management system if it didn't help the families be serviced and cared for in a more effective way. So how are you folding in these stories that you're so used to now? It just is what you do, and I love you for it. But sometimes it's a good reminder. So when I think about the why, maybe think about ways to connect it back. I'd like to show you an example of what happens when these things don't occur. What happens when very skilled professionals come together? Very skilled professionals, which you all are. They know what to do, they know how to do it, but they are not collaborative. They didn't answer the questions like what, how, when, why. They weren't looking at these very small details, but their mistake, their lesson cost $125 million. Does anybody know about the 1999 Mars Climate Orbiter? There was a spacecraft that they were launching into the space to land on Mars to tell us who knows what, something important. Half of it was designed in the UK. That would be the Jet Propulsion Lab. And then it was built in the US. Oh my gosh, look at us. We're so collaborative as countries, building things to send into space. Yay. That thing not just landed on Mars, it frickin' meteorited into Mars, buried itself into the planet because one team designed using meters and millimeters, and the US built in feet and inches. Isn't that funny? As in, not funny at all. So NASA lost $125 million because the spacecraft engineers failed to convert from English to metric measurements when exchanging data before the craft was launched. I don't like this example because that stresses me out to think about the team, but let it be a lesson to all of us. Is it going to cost you $125 million? No. But this is what sometimes lost in translation can look like across teams. So let's take a moment and think about that. I want you, if you will, to think about the what, the why, the how, and I'm going to ask you to share with one other person. Which of these 5 do you think you do very, very well right now? And which of these, could be more than one, do you feel that you may need to spend a little bit more time in the future, just to make sure that you don't have your own version of a Mars landing, but in some other less dramatic way? So I'm going to ask you just to meet with somebody. We'll make it quick. We're going to keep it maybe 4 minutes max, just to share what of these, I'll share this into your breakout. What is working for you? What are some areas that you might need to focus in on? I want you to start game planning that nice and early. Again, I'm going to keep them very short and very sweet. Let's see, maybe I'll do rooms a little bit bigger. Okay, let's see here. We're going to do, there we go. Keep them nice and short, should not take too long. I'll put 4 minutes on the clock. You should be receiving your notice next. All right. So I am curious, just so that I know in the chat, which one of these are you realizing needs more of your attention as you are building this collaborative leadership plan? The how, great. The how, wonderful. The who and the when, the what, these are great. The why, I love it. Wonderful. Very exciting. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for your team. So then how do we align these and why? The alignment really is to make sure that there are no gaps, that there are, or minimal gaps and overlaps. That is the purpose of an alignment. Of course, making sure that we are on the same page, we know where we're going, and we're also building some accountability into the process. And really, I kind of see it like circles, right? There's different levels of vision. There is the really kind of on a big scheme, do people understand what the goal is for? That's really in the why, that is in the what. What is this for? What is the purpose? And that everybody is mission critical for the successful outcome. So if I do, like I led a leadership retreat not that long ago, and I built these circles on a whiteboard, and we had to write in at every level, what is the vision for each of them? Because each one requires something different. I'll prove it to you. The individual vision is how each person's work contributes to the team's goal. What is my role? What does it look like? What happens when I do it? What happens when I don't? What is the work required of me? From a team goal, now that we know what the individual contributors do, how does the department or the team support the organizational goal? As a team, what exactly are we here to do? What problems do we solve? How do we do that? What resources do we have available to us? And then, of course, on the whole, what is the high-level objective and initiative? I find in most cases, you start with the organization first. What are we supposed to do? How are each of our teams equipped to help us get to the end goal? And who on that team needs to do it? We start big and we narrow it down to the individual. And I also find that when I'm coaching or developing somebody, they see themselves at the individual level, but they can't see the organizational level. And so my goal is to help expand that view. This is how you contribute to this team. This is how this team contributes to this organization. Some techniques you might use define that big picture. Start with the organizational goal. Break them into those specific team objectives. So this is how this team supports the organization. And then this is you as an individual contributor. This is how you are mission critical to this goal. The idea of regularly communicating the progress and the updates. Remember that milestone roadmap you built with your team? You can't always expect that they are checking in on it themselves. The idea, the hope, is that you are able to provide those updates to them. And when the goal is not making progress, if it's not getting to where it needs to go by when it's supposed to get there, you might need to reassess. Maybe you need to reassess the goal. Maybe you need to reassess who's on that goal, who's participating and who's not. Not easy to do. That's where a lot of the accountability conversations come in and the realignments come in. If those of you have been in Leading Through Change with me, or if you've taken Leading Through Change, the self-paced course I created online with CalTrin, that's when you are stuck in the J curve. You're stuck in the disruption of change and you can't get out of it, typically because there's a misalignment of the goals. Very often it's the individual contributor. We talked about tools and technologies when I said the project management system, but it doesn't have to be something so elaborate. If you're going to set some goals with folks, making sure that those SMART goals are created and well known. Have you considered making a SWOT analysis? A SWOT analysis looks at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats. What does it look like to, as a team, pull together and say, what is working for us? KPI. Ooh, KPI is a dorky language. Sorry about that. It's basically performance indicators. So key performance indicators, KPIs, would be what are the specific measurements that you're looking at to make sure that this is moving forward. So for example, if we're looking at engagement scores, maybe you're looking at completion rates, maybe it's a budget amount. Thank you. Milestones is a great way to say it. What are the milestones? KPIs is something that's used a lot in for-profit, but they do that to make sure that before we make any decisions, before we buy this thing, we remove this thing, we hire this person, we change this role, how does that align to our overall milestone? And if it doesn't align, we're not doing it. That's something I like that corporate does. And then maybe some grant-specific requirements are part of that goal-setting framework. Some of the collaboration tools, I asked you for yours, and these are a couple that I might recommend. Asana is a project management tool. I like Asana a lot, actually. Trello is kind of it. Yep, strategic plan is another way to say key performance indicators. Trello is a project management system as well. It's more visual. I think it's better for creatives. Microsoft Teams, how many people use Teams? How many people like it? I need you. I don't like it. I don't know why. I know. You know what it is? I keep deleting things by accident. I need to work on it. Slack is another option. Slack is a communication tool, a way to kind of keep and store information. Some people like it. Valeria, I'm with you. I can't figure Microsoft Teams out. I'll work on it. Our team doesn't use that as much. We use Asana, so it's fine. And then how are you checking in and providing updates? That might be weekly team huddles. That might have a very specific agenda. I was on a team once and we did 15-minute daily huddles. Hey, good morning, everybody. Here's what we're working on today. This is what it looks like. Ready, break. Cross-functional check-ins. If you have to work with another team, how are y'all keeping tabs on each other? Because the mistake is waiting until the work is not happening and now you have to do everything retroactive. How can we be proactive? And remember, I told you I like to do a challenge and solutions sheet. If I'm going to be working with, oh, we use Google Suites. I love it. Oh, but the computer doesn't like Teams. I know. Okay, so for those that are looking to map out the next steps of a project, the who, the what, the why, I would highly advise that you brainstorm with your team, top challenges, top solutions. Often you as the leader, you probably have a lot of suggestions on the solutions, but you may not see the challenges the way that your team sees the challenges. So I see it as a discussion together. For example, if a team came to me and said, Jess, we have these challenges, miscommunication between our teams. They heard millimeters, but I said inches. Then my question is, do you have a shared document or a dashboard where everybody has the clear instructions? So we're trying to put a communication together to send out to families. Is that communication in a shared Google spreadsheet? Or are you doing my actual freaking nightmare of saving a Word document and emailing it and saying, here's the revised copy. Now here's the new revised copy. Now here's revised copy 3.0. And I'm like, ay, chihuahua. I don't even know what we're doing anymore. Stress me out real fast because someone's going to respond to an old email. And then what are we doing? How are you making it easy peasy, Chuck E. Cheesy for everybody to play? Shared documents will do it. Some of your organizations might really lock down shared documents though.
Can I piggyback onto that a little bit?
Yes.
One thing that we came up to is in multidisciplinary teams is using the same word and having a different definition for it. So we had to create a glossary. Because the word outreach was the trigger point, and then we realized lots of words were different in each person's department, but outreach specifically was different when it was fundraising versus getting people to actually come and utilize the services versus letting people know in the community resources what's available to them. So a glossary was really helpful in defining common language and redefining new terms.
I love that. A glossary. I mean, let's be honest. Your profession loves an acronym. Loves it. When I first joined CalTrin, I was like, how many acronyms are there? So much so, is anybody participating in the Comprehensive Prevention Plan, CPP? Does that sound familiar? CalTrin put together a glossary of the most common words spoken in those meetings because it's like ABC, RFJ, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? So we have like a shared document to make sure that people are all on the same page. Perfect example. Anne Marie, I love it. How many of us have glossaries that we share? Challenge might be competing priorities. Listen, I understand. Everybody's got a very busy job. I don't know one industry, and I consult a lot of different industries. I've done everything from technology to real estate to sports, I don't know why, to hospitality, healthcare, everything in between. Nobody has more employees than work. I don't know somebody that does. So competing priorities is for all of us. So using those regular meetings to clarify, sometimes to renegotiate priorities. Because sometimes as a leader, half your job is negotiation skills. Being able to say, well, I can't do that, but we might be able to do this. Negotiation. Lack of ownership is often a challenge. You have two teams, and we're trying to figure out who's going to raise their hand first to say that they'll do it. Assigning clear responsibilities and tasks in advance and being very clear of what team does what and why helps to eliminate some of that, well, let someone else do it mentality. And of course, a challenge of missed deadlines. Everybody's challenge, I hear it. Conducting those effective feedback conversations. William mentioned in the beginning, like a team charter, like a team mission. Are we clear on what the deadlines are, what the process is, and maybe what recourse is as well? You sometimes are trying to coach someone to death on meeting deadlines, and take it from an old HR gal that sometimes coaching will take you so far before you got to move into performance management. I'm sorry you have to do it. It sucks, but it comes with the job. And I'm not saying like, you know, you're just waiting, you're lying in wait to like pounce on them and be like, you're getting a pick. Like, no, don't do that. You wouldn't do that. But we have to make sure that we're consistent across all. Otherwise, you know what they say, psychology spreads faster than a germ will. So you're going to have to make sure that people are aware that this is the standard and this is kind of what happens when we don't meet it. Lastly and not leastly, I told you that the person in the front of that boat is the only one that can see where they're going, which of course, in the spirit of transparency, your team knows where they're going. But how do you build trust and commitment to make sure people are willing to go there with you? If your goal is to drag people along, you're going to burn out so fast. Ain't gonna work. So if you are thinking as a trusted leader, I want you to think about this with me. I want you to think about a leader that you trust or you trusted deeply. That they could have given you the wildest ideas on what to do, and you'd be like, all right, when do we get started? You didn't even question it. Why did you trust them? Think about it. Like, think back to that person. What specific actions or behaviors built the trust that you had in them? When one comes up for you, why don't you tell me in the chat? What is a specific action or behavior that has built trust that you have had in somebody else? They always have your back because you knew that they cared about you as a person and checked in with you, Mark says. Because they followed through and they were transparent. They trusted you as well, Ashley says. Actions met words they shared. They listened. They took the time to get to know me in the beginning. They were challenging and courageous conversations. They were honest. They were real. Trusted you. They trusted me like a professional, and they knew my strengths. I love that. Listened and followed through. And they are actions. Yep, empathy. I would argue, push back and say, I would add to this list, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. I bet with every one of these that you've said, another byproduct is that they were consistent. You didn't roll a dice and say, am I going to roll a nat 20, as we say? When they come to work today, are they going to have my back? When they come to work today, are they going to be empathetic? It's because that's who they were, and they proved it through consistent actions. So I'd ask you to look at that list and tell me which one of those requires schooling and a PhD. You don't need a PhD in empathy to be empathetic. Have you considered what some of these words are and how they demonstrated it? And how are you demonstrating it? And think about how their trustworthiness, the trust that you had in them, how did that impact your level of commitment to the team or the organization? When you trust somebody, that's when you're more willing and able to take a risk, take on a project you feel kind of like, I don't feel that confident, but they have confidence in me and I trust them, so I'm going for it. I look at this list and it is incredibly replicatable. Replicatable. I never know how to say it. I'm going to say replicatable. It's very easy when you are intended to be consistent, you know, to demonstrate that. So I'd ask you to tell yourself, maybe make a little note. What is a word that would mean so much to me if my team thought of me as this? What is it? Knowledgeable, helpful, kind, caring, thoughtful, respectful. I love it. Trustworthy, reliable, wonderful. And then do yourself a favor, would you? Make yourself a to-do list and make yourself a to-don't list. These are the things that a reliable person would do, and these are things a reliable person would not. And what you have for yourself are some guardrails. Now you've chalked the boundary lines. You know where to be in play and where to be foul play. What would it look like? It's going to look different for everybody. What does it look like for you? And, just as a reminder of why I'm asking you to make yourself a to-do list and a don't list to be the trusted advisor is because, as this little owl says, my favorite, who? What are the characteristics and the behaviors of a leader that a team will not trust? And how does that impact their commitment? I would imagine it's the antithesis of this. Think about a leader you did not trust. They told you that the sky was blue and you said, I'm going to go check that, be right back. Because you couldn't even believe that. My question is, why not? I'm going to guess they were very inconsistent, or worse, they were consistently doing the wrong thing. Consistent either way. It's possible that many of us have incredible intent. I know you do. You have great intent. But if you're not consistent in your intentions, you might be sending the wrong message. And so I asked you to do that to-do list and to don't list to protect yourself. Because when I did many, many years of employee engagement, the number one reason why a trust index was low, that would be like when you do a survey of the team, is they would say that my manager does not have self-awareness. They don't know that when I ask a question and they make that face says, you're wasting my time. I don't think they know they do that. So how do we build trust in our leadership? That's going to be, of course, these 3 ingredients. Competence. Do you demonstrate that you know what you're doing through your skills, that through your knowledge and the ability to deliver the result? Your consistency, your ability to act in alignment with the values and commitments that you say and consistently. And empathy is the 3rd ingredient. Understanding and caring about the needs and the perspective of others. By the way, when I say empathy, which, some people say it's putting yourself in someone else's shoes, to be empathetic, do I have to agree with you? No, I think you're out of your mind. Sometimes I'm like, what are you talking about? But my professional buffer tells me that I might think, wait a minute, I don't agree with this, what they're saying, or that's not what I would do, or I would not have said it that way. But the buffer I've created, that we can all create, is saying, even though I feel this way, how am I going to express it on the outside? It's different than how I'm going to express it on the inside. Inside, I don't agree. Outside, I'm going to say, tell me more about that. That's interesting. How did, help me understand that? And I'm not judging it, trying really hard not to. I am human, but I am definitely not going to make you feel judged with my words, my tone, my body language, things like that. And so I bring you back to the beginning to show you this rowboat and remind you that commitment is a byproduct of trust. People show up to the training. People show up to the meetings. They show up to practice because they trust their leader. And they know that they're doing it for a reason. They trust their teammates, those around them. And so this is what I'm going to ask you just for a quick reflection time together. I'm going to ask you to take just a moment. And this is also, I would highly recommend as next steps for you, is to sit with this question a little bit longer. How do you want to show up this year? Brand new year. You have a full year to make collaborative leadership something different. What would you change? Think about what we talked about. The 5 questions, building alignment, building trust. What would you grow and develop? And what are you going to discontinue? Once you've made your list, what are the things I want to do? What worked for me? It's almost a SWOT analysis. What worked for me last year? I want to do that again. What did not work for me? It was a $125 million mistake. I'm not doing that again. And also, what does that mean I have to start, stop, try? I think the real reflection comes in the last 2 questions, which is, What happens if you do those things? Let's say you really did it. December of 2025, you did it. You did everything you said you were going to start, stop, try. What looks different for you? And what looks different for your team? What looks different for your community? What looks different for the families? And then what happens if you don't? This year goes by just as it did last year. What does it look like? And if some of you are feeling a little misalignment today, imagine carrying that for the next 12 months until you get to the end of the year. Or you come back in January of 2026 and you're like, yeah, I didn't do anything. Okay. But you know, nothing changes if nothing changes. To me, I think the benefit for you of attempting these things at least 1% at a time. Like I said, if you're a 7, what would bring you to an 8? If you're an 8, what would bring you to a 9? Is the possibility to go through the next year and actually see change. Because it's not going to self-correct. It never does. And I know that some of you have challenges. I get it. I get it. Some of those challenges are structural in nature, like the disorganization, the siloing. A lot of the alignment activities that we've talked about will assist with that, mapping out what is currently happening. Where do we need to go? Where's the gap? What's not working for us? It might be interpersonal, because all of us are beautifully messy, sloppy humans. And you put people in a building with personalities and different thoughts and you shake it up, and that's called employment. I can tell you that from an HR standpoint. So what does it look like to foster healthier communication by skill building in a team? I was 27 years old when I learned how to do healthy conflict. I didn't know how to do that in the workplace. It was a coworker that taught me. How many of us are just trusting that people came as a finished product and just know what to do? How are we skill building? You know what they say, the rising tide lifts all boats. What type of skills are you providing? Oh gosh, you know what? I wish you knew somebody that did training for free. Oh darn. I wish you knew somebody that was funded by the state and was here to serve you and your staff. CalTrin, thank you. And there's many others, but we're here for you. Some of the challenges that you have are cultural, like differences in work styles, the culture of a department, the culture of an organization, the values and expectations. This is where the shared communication comes in. That's where that mission and vision and charter that William was talking about comes in. Are we all in agreement about why we're here? And if you can't align to that, are you staying because you think I'm going to be mad? I promise I am not. We will catch up at happy hour. You don't have to work here for me to like you. Behavioral barriers. And this is going to be when you get people resistant to change or low engagement. I don't mind when people are resistant to change. Do you know that? It doesn't bother me because it tells me that they have a relationship with change that hasn't been kind to them. And I can't change that, but I can show you through my consistency what change with me looks like, and we'll get to where we need to get to together. So strength-based coaching or feedback, effective feedback, especially when the resistance to change is starting to spread to your other team members. Then I've got to single you out. We need a conversation before you kind of set the pace for what change looks like here. A lot of options, and they're all right. And I know that you are so driven, and I find it to be an act of love when leaders come to these sessions. If you didn't love your team and you didn't love the organization or your job or quality and commitment, you wouldn't be here. Why would you come? So I'm grateful for, I see it as an act of love to be here, to learn something, hopefully to take back. And there's plenty of tools and resources that you are more than welcome to dive into. Yes, a lot of areas of the internet have information. I'll just tell you what we have. CalTrin has some upcoming trainings, and pre-recorded trainings. We even have self-paced courses all available to you at no cost. For example, we're doing strengths-based leadership in March. We purchase a Gallup assessment for those participants that apply and that we select. And I'll walk you through it myself. I'm a Gallup coach, happy to do it. We do an 8-month emerging leaders development program. Some of you alumni, nice to see you again. 8 months with a small team of leaders in California. And we walk through step-by-step leadership from the inside out. From who do I want to be to how do I do it? Effective feedback is an archive training. So if you're looking for ways to give more effective feedback, you're welcome to it. Building through togetherness, not tasks and to-dos is a replay. I did not facilitate that one. I thought it was excellent. And then last year I developed a course called Leading Through Change. It's a self-paced course now, and you can access that. All of that and more is found on our website. And I brought it to share and tell time. Here we go. This is our website. If you haven't been on it, how dare you? CalTrin.org. I'm dropping it into the chat for you now so that you have it. CalTrin.org has, you can see under our training, the upcoming calendars that we have. If you're looking for something specific to an area like leadership development, you'll find that in upcoming trainings. And of course, now we have micro learnings, so you can get small, delicious little chunks of learning and self-paced courses. Again, funded by California. There's nothing to pay here except implementation, which I hope you do. And the last resource I'd like to point to your attention, Casey, if you wouldn't mind dropping it in the chat, this is called a DAC assessment. For those of you that have attended DAC with me before, you know that it is a tool that the Center for Creative Leadership kind of put together an assessment. They have a whole training. It's excellent. I'd highly recommend it. You have to buy it through them, or if we ever offer it again, just apply through us. But the direction, alignment, commitment assessment allows you to self-check to see, all right, where does my team need the most support right now? Are they clear on where we're going, the direction? Are they clear on who's supposed to be doing what? That's alignment. And do they want to? That's commitment. If you would love to use one like this, what Casey's dropped for you, the second link is a guide. Our leader, our fearless leader, talk about collaboration. Her name is Jennifer Rolls-Roots. Gosh, she's good. She's real good. She's also the director of the California Evidence-Based Clearinghouse, CEBC. So you would assume that, like, the research person that she is, when I talked about DAC, she was like, Jess, I bought her a mug. It says, nice story, where the facts. So when I told her about DAC, she was like, cute. How do people use it? And I said, oh, you're right. So our team put together this how to use it with steps, links. Here's what we would do. This is how we would roll it out. These are the questions we would ask. And we use this for your implementation, or we offer it to you for implementation. And my best advice to you in using this is don't just assess your thoughts on how you think it's going. You got to ask your team. Give them this assessment. See what they say, not based on what you think. And with that, as usual, we landed right on time. We always do. And I want to just thank you so much for being here. Can I post the PDF? If you click that second link, that will actually get you right to the PDF. It's called the DAC Short Guide. Takes you right there. So with that, we have a survey. This is the first time we've ever ran this for you. It was created for you by us. And so I would ask that you complete the survey. It'll only make it better for the next run. And again, just thank you so much for your time, your service, and any way that I can support you. The CalTrin team is here for you. I would be more than happy to stay on for a few questions for anybody that wants to hang back. Otherwise, we'll send you a replay. We'll send you your any resources that were spoken about today, and your survey will come with a certificate of attendance at the end. With that, thank you all so much.